Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what would you say to someone if you were sarcastically talking about the popularity of one of Claude Debussy's, most famous works?
I don't know.
Clair de Lune Obscur. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I will never learn how to parry. Blocks are not what I do in games. No block in block host Madelyn. I'm your I had a mental block trying to come up with a joke host Madelyn.
I'm your stack and blocks is what I can't do.
Fuck,
Host
wow.
Emma.
Oh, shoot. Can I go back and redo the joke? That would have been a clever joke.
No.
To be like, blocks. Dang it. Welcome to the show. This week, we're talking about Lumines, the rare time we've actually looked up how to pronounce the game before we're on the air being like, oh god, I hope that's how you say it.
I feel like we do that with names more often than we do with games.
That's true. We're usually decent with games.
Yeah.
Except when they're being pulled from... You really should have looked them up when they go into the hat.
That's true.
Because sometimes you're like, Lumines?
I did not. I don't think I said
know you didn't,
Lumines.
but that was just a joke. Anyway, we're talking about Luminous, and we're talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So we're starting kind of deep into the series. Kidding.
Yeah. No one's made that joke yet, Mel. Glad to tell you that you're
I'm
the
really
first
funny.
one to ever make that joke.
Everybody comes here for my humor. So let's talk Luminous.
Yeah.
Will Luminous... It won't, because there's more to it, but will Luminous engage the Tetris rule of Talk This?
Oh, in terms of mashup?
Yeah.
I mean, the initial, one of the initial ideas before they settled on Luminous was they wanted to make a Tetris game.
Right, and they were like, you can't make a Tetris game, we're making Tetris Effect. Is what it's... I've read between the lines, is what's going on.
No, the initial...
Yeah.
No, they wanted to make Tetris initially, and then eventually got the chance to make a Tetris game. Not they were working on Tetris Effect for 20 years.
So follow your dreams.
And now they're making another Luminous game very inspired by Tetris Effect. So
eat your heroes.
all the same people.
I know.
I feel like I should emphasize.
I know. I'm just
And I
kidding.
don't think they ate what's his face, the Russian guy.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
I guess Tetris isn't that old.
It's not that old. I can't assume. I feel like I assume that he was probably not that old when he made it, but what do I know, really?
Is he as rich as God? This is not relevant.
Again, I don't know. We
Yeah.
talked about Tetris a long time ago.
Long time ago. Unbelievably long time ago. Anyway, Luminous is a puzzle game that's not unlike Tetris, but is not Tetris. The first one came out in 2004. Luminous Puzzle Fusion,
Yes.
it's called. Developed by Q Entertainment for the PSP, a launch title for the PSP, developed very specifically for the PlayStation Portable. Published by Bandai in Japan, and speaking of companies that I pronounce in an inconsistent way, one of which is wrong, Ubisoft. This is a
I don't know.
Madelyn thing. Elsewhere.
I guess we should give the French more respect this episode
You're right.
out of all of them, but alas. Yeah, Luminous is there's a ton of interviews with
Tetsuya Mizuguchi.
yes, Tetsuya Mizuguchi.
Actually, with the whole team. There's a bunch with Takayuki Nakamura, who's the composer as well.
Mm-hmm. And they made a bunch of Luminuses. Lumini, I guess, yeah. And you can still get the original, the remastered version, which I did.
Emma was playing it.
Because it was $4.50. It's still $4.50 on the Steam Summer Sale
This
right now.
episode brought to you by the Steam Summer Sale.
I guess. No, I was thinking I should get it on PlayStation and then you can watch it, but it's still it's not on sale on
It's $15
PlayStation.
everywhere else, which is, probably for the amount of time that this might... I don't know if this is going to scratch your brain itch. There's a possibility of this game, being a game that could be a problem for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you can wait for Luminous Arise to come out and try that.
A new one coming.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the PlayStation blog... Why don't I explain what Luminous is first before I get into, the weird of how we talk about these games. These
Sure.
games are like full body synesthetic experiences, and it's like, buddy, it's Tetris.
Sure.
So Luminous is a block drop-in puzzle game, right? You're familiar with Tetris, listener, surely. But unlike Tetris, it's always kind of usually two-toned 2x2 blocks that you're dropping that you can rotate, and you want to use those blocks to create squares in your like playing field.
Yes.
Basically, much like Tetris, except in Tetris you're just making lines. And there's a timeline, like a sweeper bar. I'm saying sweeper bar because I just watched Wipeout. That's where that came from. Sweeper bar, but not like the Wipeout sweeper bar. There's a bar that passes back and forth on the screen, and every time it passes through a successfully made square, it gets rid of that block, and then everything falls, right? And the puzzle continues from there. And it's very much like it's a rhythm game, really, or it's a very musical game.
Yes.
Lots and lots of original music. You have to lock into that if you're actually going to be good at this game.
Yeah, well, the timeline is the measures.
Yes, all of the music 4/4, except for in Old El Paso, or whatever, they talk about all the time. They're like, it's crazy that we made a piece of music where it's 5/4 and then 3/4. Who would have thought?
I didn't see them saying it was crazy. I just saw like, well, it averages out to 4/4, so I guess that's fine.
Not crazy. They were just like, this one breaks the rules.
Yeah, no, I mean, they made them all, they wanted them all in 4/4 on purpose to, enhance the puzzle solving element and the rhythm of it. I think if you went into crazy time signatures, it just would get overwhelming for the player, ultimately. They also describe it mostly as, like, ambient music is the genre, rather than, like, specifically being, like, it's mostly, like, sort of electronic inspired, but it's meant to be, like, because you never know when you're going to switch to the next song, right? So it needs to just flow from one into the other without necessarily needing to hear the beginning or an end of it and still be enjoyable. So it's essentially just like random background music at a club is sort of the vibe.
Which is really the inspiration, although I will say that later Lumini, that's not even really the correct Latin, but whatever. Later entries in this series do feature music from such music legends as the Black Eyed Peas, Gwen Stefani, and Hoobastank. So, it's not all ambient. Unless you consider the Black Eyed Peas to be ambient, which, to be honest, at this point, things like Boom Boom Pow and I've Got a Feeling do pretty much constitute ambient music for me.
Yeah. I read, there was a quick Pocket Gamer interview with Mizuguchi, who said that at least part of they were working on Luminous already, but the idea of like really using like the music and the puzzle element came from, he was in Okinawa, he heard a Mondo Grosso song apparently, and there were stars out, and he was like, wow, it'd be really cool if the stars like shine to the music.
Did you read the story too when he was in Zurich, right? He was like watching like a street festival from above, and there was a DJ set and people were like bouncing to the beat, and he was like, I wish I could play this as a game.
Yeah.
So this man, ultimately what you need to understand about Luminous is that it's this man attempting to like create a rave as a video game, but like also it's nothing like that at all.
Yeah. I mean, but this was
a regular raver.
This was the first game from Q Entertainment, but he had worked at Sega for a while previous to that, and had made he made Rez, Space Channel 5. There was, I did read like a Eurogamer profile of him, where he said he wanted to do music videos initially, which makes sense, sure. Right? So he was working in advertising, but found it uncreative. And then he saw like a cool Sega machine that like turned you upside down in arcades. And he was like, that's hip as hell. And so he went straight to the Sega office and was like, can I talk to the guy in charge here? I'd like a job. The receptionist's like, do you have an appointment? He's like, no, make me one right now. And apparently he talked a lot about like games. He wants to make future games. Guy
he didn't want to make games.
Well, he wanted to make games of the future. He was like, the games now are too otaku.
Yeah.
Right? They're not for the people. And apparently that was good. They were like, hell yeah, you're hired. Sega was a lot. This was when Sega was much smaller.
Yeah.
But it's still like, imagine. I can't imagine nowadays like walking into an office really.
Right. Like in what industry
like,
could you do that? Do you think?
I don't know.
Maybe AI. I think in a certain kind of AI startup, you could walk in and blow a lot of hot air.
It is probably tech startups, just in general.
Yeah.
AI is what tech startups are doing now, but that whole thing. But with that, you would not make a full career, unfortunately, because most tech startups just implode.
It's cool that this guy decided to do this, making rave games, instead of being like Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Like an alternate path here. Also from that Pocket Gamer interview, so Lumines has a high score of 999,999 points.
Yeah.
And they were like, why'd you do that? Like, what was the reason behind this? He was like, I didn't think anyone would get that score.
Yeah.
Like, you're kidding me. Like, that's a high score. And then he was also like, I didn't think the battery would last longer than that.
Yeah. He was saying, like, 2 hours is the battery life of the PSP. Yeah. So I assumed if you played it for 2 hours straight, that's what would get you to the points.
Speaking of the PSP, right, so we mentioned this was a launch title, and it was actually, as is so often the case with these handheld games, it's so delightful to talk about. Nobody ever talks about, well, sometimes they do, they're like, oh, the cognitive architecture of the PS5, right, like, that's why I designed for this. But nobody ever is like, ha ha ha, I designed this for the Xbox Series X.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Is that the baby one? I can't remember.
No, the S is the baby one.
I designed this specifically for the Xbox Series S.
There's one behind us right now that I really should probably trade in. Well, I just haven't used it at all for like a year, I think, except for like the Criterion Channel app. So this was a game that was really specifically designed with the PSP in mind, and not just because it was like a new platform coming out, right? Mm-hmm. As things have to be designed for new platforms. But, and this was weird for me to think about. It was weird for me to think about, oh, like, Game Boys didn't have this. It was the first handheld, really, to have a headphone jack. Yeah.
Huh?
Well, Sony was, also big into, like, music hardware. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they still are in some way.
What music hardware even exists?
I don't know if they make, like, vinyl players or whatever.
Yeah.
But they had, the Walkman.
Yeah.
Essentially. And this was supposed to be sort of like a gaming Walkman of sorts. And so very suited for a game that's very reliant on its music.
It's just weird for me to think of, like, isn't the whole point of the Game Boy that you're playing it on your commute, right? Like, isn't that the whole Japanese salaryman thing, is he's playing his Game Boy Advance? And the idea, like, all these people were just, like, blasting the Pokemon music all the time.
They probably had the music down.
I know, it's just weird. It's just funny to think about, like, it's so annoying. Now it's like, oh, somebody's playing something on their phone without headphones. Like, you absolute buffoon.
Yeah.
And that it's only been, like, the PSP was the first headphone? Crazy. Anyway, that's why they designed it, because it was, like, for music, and you could play this anywhere with your headphones, and the music was essential.
Yeah, and when they were making the remaster of the original, they did put it on all systems, right? But the initial inspiration was because the Switch came out and had its HD rumble, and they were like, that sounds cool. That sounds like it could be really cool with Luminous.
This is crazy.
We should make it so that we can take advantage of the HD rumble, too. And so they decided to remaster it.
Yeah, but see, here's what they did with that. They made, like a vibration mode, where I want to read a quote from the Ars Technica piece, but basically the idea is you can connect up to 8 controllers up to this Luminous thing. I think it's only 4 on PlayStation. And they will buzz in time to the music, creating, like, a full body experience for you. So, like, for instance, the Ars Technica review of this, he goes, I also have 6 spare Joy-Cons for the Nintendo Switch, which are maybe half the size of an old Wii remote. As a result, these are easier to arrange, their flatter shape means it's easier to feel their buzz in something like a pocket. I have since come up with a relatively simple system to test Luminous Remaster's trance vibration. 1 in each sock, 2 in my pants pockets, and 1 tucked into each shirt sleeve. Yes, this is weird to write out, especially because you have to trust me when I talk about how absolutely freaking awesome this option is for a frantic music-timed puzzle game. In your socks.
Hell yeah.
I mean, sure. Why not?
I love it when games do weird stuff with their hardware, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, so the similar vibe of like the PlayStation blog announcing Luminous Arise's release, which is coming this fall, I think, was very much like, oh, you're gonna feel it in your body, like trippy, full body experience. And I was reading that as like one of the first things I was reading in preparation for this, and I was like, okay, buddy.
Well, that's how everybody talks about Tetris Effect too, which I still have yet to get to.
Yeah.
I do want to try Tetris Effect at some point. And you know, I having played Luminous on my Steam Deck now, at least, like, it does really like lock you in. Like, Madelyn was playing the other game we'll talk about,
Clair Obscur. We don't have to keep the title hidden.
and I was playing Luminous, and I was just bent over forward because my Steam Deck was low on battery because I hadn't plugged it in since we got back from traveling.
Stupid.
Very stupid. And I guess my best run took me like over 20 minutes, but I did not conceptualize that time passing. And then when I got to the shake your body part, I did feel a little bit like I was going to have a panic attack because there was like so much sound and visuals happening while also my brain was attempting to put these things into squares.
Yeah, Luminous is a much longer form. Like, even if you are really good at Tetris, you're gonna play Tetris for forever, right? Like, that's like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Luminous, you can play for quite a long time.
Yes.
Stretch.
Yeah, so the main mode is mission. And it just like starts you at level 1, and every once in a while you go up levels, and then the skin changes in the background, which changes how it's displayed, like the visuals that's going on and the song that is playing. And you can get up to level 100, but you always start at level 1 and then move forward. And as you continue to get better, you unlock new skins, and then you can make your own like shuffle mode,
right,
too, out of the skins that you've unlocked. But as I said, like, I got to level 18 or 19 in 20 minutes. I assume if you're really like, because you can make the block drop fast in this if you want to, or you can let it sort of fall down like Tetris.
Yeah, although I will say, from what I was reading, and you tell me if this matches up with your experience, like in Tetris it gets faster and faster and faster, and you can't stop that. From what it sounded like to me, Luminous had a lot more like you can make a mistake at any speed and you might not be able to recover from it, but like it's not really forcing you to go faster unless you want to.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so reliant on the music. Mm-hmm. If it was going faster and the timeline was still going at the same speed,
right,
ish.
It'd be weird.
I mean, I guess some of them are higher tempos, right? But I don't think it like consistently gets faster in any way. At least from my impression of doing it. But you do start to, at least from my inexperience with it, you do start to have a lot of blocks on the bottom that you just can't get rid of anymore.
Yeah.
And that becomes sort of the problem that leads to you stacking up too high.
Well, it was interesting too, I was reading an AV Club from Clayton Purdon kind of take on this game, where he sort of said, like, if I was thinking about like what a good puzzle game would be, he says, 1, the game's rules are fairly easily learned. 2, those rules constrict, scaling up to an almost impossible difficulty. And 3, these qualities create a sort of perpetual playability, often one match right after the next. And then he was like, actually, I don't think Luminous follows any of these rules.
No, I don't think so.
Because it's like, it takes a little bit, unlike Tetris, where, look, obviously people are better at Tetris, right? But like, you can pretty much figure out the strategy from like 2 seconds into playing. Luminous requires like a little bit more learning to get into the groove. It's long enough that you don't really want to play it back to back to back to back, and it doesn't necessarily actually get more difficult over time. You just mess up. Yeah.
Later ports also include things like puzzle modes.
Yeah.
Where you have like a challenge to clear all the blocks in a certain amount of moves. I don't know if there's versus modes that are either against the computer or you can do it against another person as well. There's like time attack where you have to clear as many blocks as you can within a certain time period. I think there's a couple others too. But they did, if you are sick of mission mode, there are a few other things that you can do to sort of speed it up. And the puzzle ones have the added thing of like trying to teach you strategies for how to clear blocks better.
Yeah. So basically, it's up there. It's with the all-timer puzzle games.
Yeah, people who have played Luminous on the PSP are like really into it, and then people who haven't have no idea what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was sort of the experience of like when they announced the new one, the Luminous Arise. There was a very dichotomy between people being like Luminous and people being like,
"What is this?
What is this more Tetris Effect?"
Yeah. How many more different ways can we drop blocks, do you think?
I don't know. We love We've talked about this. We love blocks as a species. We love pushing them. We love dropping them. We love jumping at them. Mm-hmm. We love doing them in video games.
Well, speaking of blocks we don't love, let's talk about Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, the 33rd game in the series. Actually, the 34th game. Expedition 0 is the first one.
Yeah.
I learned that in the trivia.
Although it counts down in the game, so...
No, the expeditions count up.
No, they go 0, and then then they started going down.
Huh?
So your Expedition 33, next year's will be Expedition 32. The one before was Expedition 34.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
Shoot. Even more games for me to catch up on. Hey, I'm bad at this game. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a 2025 role-playing game. An FRPG.
Yes.
If you will.
Lots of people doing JRPG.
That's really funny, actually. That's much better than French RPG. From French studio Sandfall Entertainment, published by Kepler Interactive for the PlayStation 5, Windows, and Xbox Series X and S that it was specifically made for. No, just kidding. Emma has actually played this.
Yes, I played and finished
like
it.
90 minutes of it. Did you finish it for the podcast?
No.
This time? I didn't think so.
I was in Act 2 somewhere, I think. But yeah, I did talk about it a little bit on our 6-week podcast.
Might have been 7 weeks.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
That one that we do regularly every few weeks or so. So in Expedition 33, the initial setup is you live in Lumiere, which is like fricked up Paris, essentially.
Yeah, pre-World War I, fricked up Paris.
Belle Epoque is the specific time period that it draws a lot of inspiration from. And across the sea, there's this monolith where every year this sort of eldritch being wakes up and paints a new number. One day she started at 100, and since then it's started going down every year. And when she paints down, everybody who is currently that age or older gommages, as they put it, which essentially means that they turn into sort of dust and flower petals.
They're dead.
They are dead. So each year, the city sends an expedition to the monolith with the intention of investigating, setting things up for future expeditions, like gathering information, and ideally, telling the paintress, hey now, can you knock it off? So in this game, you are playing as Expedition 33, who upon landing at the monolith encounters somebody who's old.
And that's what they say.
It's scary.
So weird to this guy. They're like, you're old.
Well, just think about it. Like, you're in your 30s. You probably haven't seen anyone above 40 for years.
I know, but it's...
And, like, you see an old guy, and that would be scary.
I'm gonna push back on that a tiny bit, because these 30-year-olds at least probably knew their grandparents, like as children.
I'd have to do the math on that. Well, okay, so when they were 0, it would have been
like mid-60s.
Mid-60s.
Yeah.
So, depending on I guess it depends on how young their parents were, but not all of them.
They were aware of people who looked as old as this
man.
man.
When they were old enough to remember, which let's say like 8,
Yeah.
I guess, like, 50s.
This man could have been in his 50s.
Still.
I know. I'm just saying, like, come on. Show some respect.
Show Andy Serkis some respect.
Come on. Andy has earned this.
Anyway, they meet an old guy. He takes them calling him old really personally, I guess, and kills most of them. Except for at least your player character, your main protagonist, Gustav, who awakens and has some troubles being like, oh no, everybody's dead. But there are at least a few other survivors. And they have a duty to continue and do as much as they can while they are alive. So we'll go forward with their turn-based action element combat.
They sure will. This game really hits for me. The idea of like, oh, your life is over in your mid to early 30s. It's like, ooh, yeah, tasty. Spot on.
There was an article on Endless Mode, which is the new, like, paced games-focused brand. That was, like, this is one of, like, the first, like, really big examples of, like, COVID storytelling in games. Which they haven't talked about, like, in interviews explicitly as being an inspiration, but the development did start during COVID.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, the idea of, like, people disappearing from the streets around you, very COVID core,
sure.
Right?
Nice.
So I think there's elements of that in there, too.
That makes sense to me. So this game first of all, this game, very well reviewed, sold like a bajillion copies. Right, big success.
They sold 3.3 million copies in 33 days, which they were delighted by.
Effed up. And it went gold 33 days before launch, too.
They did that on purpose.
Well, of course they did that on purpose. Well, I mean, I don't know. At what cost?
At what cost? But
you know?
I like to think they were done on day 35, and it's like, just do, like, 2 more things.
Yeah. Like, can you make his hair worse?
Can you make this bun hairstyle like, even worse? Uglier?
I've decided that's part of his personality for me now.
Good.
He's carrying it as a penance.
Yeah, so one of the things you can do is change the wardrobe of the characters. So you'll get more things you can use to dress up the characters as you go. And the first one you get is like Gustav pays a token to get his hair done. And it's the worst little man bun that you've ever seen in your life.
But this game has become, I think it's parries are like the thing.
Yes. Lots of people talking about parries.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
It's controversial. Should we have parries? Should we not have parries?
We're in a parry era here.
But yeah, so this game would gather a lot of initial attention because it's a very, like, realistic graphics style, but it has turn-based combat, which those two, there's a lot of turn-based games, a lot of realistic-looking games, but those have not really combined as much, and people have been really hungry for it.
Like AA space that this sort of lives in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, even in AAA, but I'm like...
I mean, that's what people want, right? Is they're like, where's my turn-based Final Fantasy?
Yeah.
I don't want to play Octopath Traveler or whatever. And that's sort of like what... And it's unfortunately sort of what a lot of bad actors have been putting on this game.
Yeah.
To be like, those stupid Japanese people. The French really get it.
Take that. Emma's gonna get that quoted out of context.
But that
shows up on social media.
That was a conversation around the game, unfortunately. There was some very, like, 2010s core articles and reviews that came out for this game being like, wow, I love that there aren't teenagers in this, when, it's a slight spoiler for you, probably the teenager, the most important character in this game.
Sure.
So, that's a little bit of a...
Right. Look, whatever. I think wanting adult characters, I think that's a fine take to have. To be like, oh, it's nice that this... Because it's not wrong that many of the, like, quite popular... turn-based RPGs
just the persona that these people know.
Exactly. Are about teenagers. And even the Final Fantasies that aren't about teenagers are about sometimes people with them, like Leon is a teenager, more or less, regardless of whether he actually is, right? So, you know.
You're calling him Leon, which
Oh, shoot, sorry.
exposes you.
Squall, my bad. Oopsies. Squall is a teenager. Yikes. Yikes to me. My action RPGs. So, you know, I think yes, I'm sure there are bad actors, I'm sure, making that comment, but also I think that's fine. I think it's fine to want an adult.
Sure. It's not, it was the tone of it, yes. And also the lack of reality to the situation of Clair Obscur anyway.
Right.
But in addition to its turn-based combat, more traditional, like you select the move, and you do it, right? The way that works.
Yeah.
It also has real-time elements a la, like, Paper Mario, essentially.
You mean a la Yakuza Like a Dragon.
A la Yakuza Like a Dragon.
But yes, also Paper Mario.
Where both when you do attacks, you can have little QuickTime events that increase, like, the abilities of that attack. And also, upon defending, you can choose to either dodge an attack or try to parry it. So, dodge has a more generous timing on it. It also has perfect dodge, and when you perfect dodge, you know that that's the timing for the parry, which has a much tighter timing on it. But if you do parry all the strikes of an attack, you unleash a counter on the enemy. You'll also discover jump and gradient parry as well, with more elements that you have to keep in mind when doing the combat.
Should more RPGs allow us to jump?
Yeah, you can also jump just running around for some reason.
Yeah, you can. For some reason, for joy.
What really makes, we've talked about janky games on the show relatively recently, I think, and one thing that does make Clair Obscur, I think, a little stickier than a lot of games, it has some of the worst god-awful platforming you will ever have to do.
Good. The people long for that.
And some of the absolute worst little mini-games ever invented.
Are they really hard? I was reading some articles that are like, they're inspired by Final Fantasy and they're miserable.
Yeah, you'll find these like beaches around that have like little challenges for you. A lot of them are platforming. The only one that I did had like spinning platforms that went really fast and genuinely made me nauseous. Cool. But the one they're probably talking about is beach volleyball, which on the field you have like a attack to like initiate combat, right? So it uses that. But there is a huge wind up and huge cooldown on that. So you have to kind of like get in position and know exactly when to do it, and get in position and know exactly when to do it. And the camera's not very helpful, and the hitbox on it is kind of weird, and it's just generally like, what the hell am I doing?
You're really selling it.
Yeah, once I did that, and another one we have to like climb up really high platforming, I just avoided the beaches from then on. I was like, getting the swimsuit outfits is really not worth the misery.
Yeah. Why bother when we've already got the worst haircut of all time?
I know, right?
Yeah, I played a little bit of this game because it's this live in-person episode here, baby. So I played a little bit to start. I could see myself continuing.
Feel free to take my disc, because I don't plan on...
Is that allowed? Should we be saying that on the show? Am I even allowed to do that anymore?
Yes! Yes, you're allowed to borrow my disc.
Okay.
Because I don't see myself... There's a lot of post-game content you can do. It starts to be... I think I said on the 6-week show, like, I don't really think you really have to be great at parrying to get through the game. And I still stand by that for the main story. Mm-hmm. But once you start getting into the side bosses, it's like, you better be perfectly parrying every single time, or sucks to suck.
Well, would you describe it as a kind of rhythm game? I saw one article on Games Radar that talked about it that way, and my brain went, ooh, a mashup! A mashup!
So I did find that listening to the sound that the attacks made was a lot more consistent for me than watching the animation. And so some of the bosses that are really like loud and have a lot going on visually were very hard for me because I could not
isolate
I couldn't hear the noise. I tend to think those are the less well designed ones. But it's not like to the beat of the music or anything. So, despite the music being very good, by the way, but probably worth turning down a little bit if you're really trying to lock in so you can hear what's happening.
It's probably good that I've started out showing so little skill at parrying. Because another article I read noted this, that like, unlike block systems in many games, when you parry or dodge here, you take no damage. You totally negate it.
Yes.
Which does mean that with enough tenacity and inner strength, you could defeat bosses and enemies that are far beyond your capabilities.
Yes.
Which is unfortunately something that I love to do. So let's hope that I can keep like the hubris levels low and not start doing too much of that. Yeah.
That's probably good.
Yeah.
Anyway, this game, this is the first game from Sandfall Entertainment, founded...
Ubisoft
yes,
guys.
Just founded by one ex-Ubisoft guy,
and then
picked up a few other ex-Ubisoft guys, but it was this Guillaume, which I'm pretty sure that's right, Guillaume Broche, was getting bored at Ubisoft during COVID and had this like sort of passion idea for a while, and so mostly seems to have just posted on Reddit, being like, hey, does anyone want to help? Hey, any voice actors interested? And apparently got a lot that way. The writer...
Jennifer Svedberg-Yen.
Yes, was in Australia at the time, and initially was...
Which means she was trapped there for years. Yeah. Thinking about that. Australia did not let people leave. Anyway, go on.
Was initially going to be a voice actress for one of the characters in an earlier iteration, but eventually came on instead as the head narrative designer for it. The composer they found on SoundCloud.
Yeah, it was not someone who had done games before.
No. It was just like, that's cool. We could do that. And we're lucky enough to get a lot of support from Kepler Interactive. Their core team is around 30-ish people. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that Clair Obscur was made by 30 people.
They have tons of subcontractors.
As people like to parrot. Like, even setting aside subcontractors, like, just counting, like, the orchestra.
Right.
That they hired and the singers. I think one of the articles I was reading was, like, there's, like, an 8-person Korean, like, battle animation team that did, like, the battle animation. So... you'll see a lot like, 30-person game, small developer, and it's like with caveats.
And like still a small developer relative to like the team at Square Enix making Final Fantasy, but like
it was also initially like a steampunk London game,
right?
With like aliens and zombies and stuff. With the same style of combat and a lot of the same character names, apparently. Although I don't know if the characters themselves changed in the shift. And they had just like a partner that was like, is this what you'd like? Sure, but is like this really what you want to write? Yeah. And they were like, I guess not. And decided to totally restart the narrative of it. Yeah. It wasn't a total reboot because, to my understanding, the gameplay was pretty like, this is what we're doing with it by then. Yeah. But just in terms of the setting and the story, pulled from some of their like side projects they were also doing at the time, and created a new narrative for people.
People have quite liked the story and the storytelling, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
That was loaded.
I have quibbles.
Sure.
It's interesting because in one of the interviews with the writer, she was talking about like, I really don't like it when like people don't know where they're going from the start, right?
Yeah.
And from what it sounds like from the inspirations, it does seem like they knew where they were going from the start, but it sure doesn't feel like that playing it. Feels to me, it kind of felt like they had like two ideas and they kind of like stapled them together. And in some places that like comes together beautifully, right? And in some places it's like, what's this weird little corner doing right here?
Yeah.
We didn't think about that. And they also talked a little bit about like not wanting things to be like black and white and not having like a good and bad ending or whatever. And so introducing like moral complexity, which they do, but not in a way that I thought was like terribly well realized or super compelling to me. Yeah. I know a lot of people have found it very compelling. Obviously it was like, it is one of the best reviewed games of the year still. Yep. I think it was unseated by something recently. I don't know if Hidden Blueprints have been sort of trading back and forth a little bit. But yeah, it has a lot going for it, for sure. Yeah. It just also feels very much like a game made by a team that didn't know if they were going to get to make another one. Yeah. And so they're kind of like, here's everything we got. Yeah. And so there's some charm in that, but also some like rough edges and
well, interesting to see like what comes out of this game, both from the studio, right, but also from so many articles I saw were like, what should other RPGs learn from Clair Obscur? It's like, I actually don't, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't feel like what it's doing is like so like all in one package maybe, but like all of these are like, oh, they're turn-based games. They're like realistic games about bands of heroes. Like it's hard to think of what gets, and like even the parrying is like, well, that's like basically Dark Souls, right? So it'll be interesting to see like what people take away from this in making their own slightly paler imitations.
Yeah. They're the team is very open about their inspirations. They have not been like trashing other games the way that people have used them to trash other games in a way that's slightly like, okay, man, chill out.
Yeah, calm down. It's just a game.
But they're very open about like their inspirations and the games that they like and the things that they like took from this, and I feel like you can look at the game and see where they took inspiration, right? Totally. Which is not to say like, oh, and that means it's really derivative and lazy, right? It's just like they have a very big love of this genre, and I think that you can see the ways that they took from it, but I don't know if they really, like, at least mechanically, I don't know if they really added anything like original. They brought some stuff back that hasn't been used in a while. Yeah. People were very excited when they showed like the world map feature where you like little versions of yourself running on the thing, like classic RPGs used to have. So they've brought back things that haven't been used in a while, and I think that's why it maybe feels fresher, and maybe we'll see those things cycle back around a little bit.
Do you think they will include the 3-player local co-op mod that's out there right now?
That'd be fun.
Yeah, right? Bring it on.
No, that'd be very toxic, actually, I feel like.
Yeah, I'd be like, God, you didn't hit the parry! Yeah. No, they should do it where you all have to do all the parries, and if like 2 out of the 3 of you get it,
it works.
Then it works.
That's fun.
Or something like that.
Yeah, they've said, like, they're not really thinking about DLC right now. I think there's a few areas where I'm like, this is where DLC is going to happen on the world map. Sure. But we will see how they move forward. They were clearly very successful, so we will see.
Just swimming in their money.
Yeah, they're focusing on bug fixing right now, I said, which, like I said, it is a bit of a janky game. I did get stuck in a state once where I think the character was, like, stuck with the falling tag on or something, so I couldn't interact with anything, and I had to reload a previous save. And there's a couple things like that, or like the camera goes like, why is this here? But yeah.
Well, you ready to mash?
I'm ready to mash.
Okay. I mean,
Tetris, but you parry.
Yo. No. That's like, there's like something there.
Is there?
I think there is. I think Tetris, but it's like you can like parry certain blocks somehow, right? Like you get a bad block, you can like
Fruit Ninja.
Don't say like Fruit Ninja. I mean, kind of though. People liked Fruit Ninja.
I liked Fruit Ninja.
I did too. No, like Tetris where there's like a high risk, high reward, like you can reject a block, but if you miss, like
you get 4 of them in a row.
Yeah, exactly. Something to that, I would say.
You say so.
People like weird. People like Tetris.
Tetris,
okay?
but French.
Oui. How would you pronounce Tetris if it was a French word?
Tetris.
There we go. Perfect. No, okay. So yes, Tetris with parrying, actually, I think, like Dark Souls Tetris, probably good.
Sure.
Probably good.
Yeah.
Actually, there's something to that. Like Tetris, but is this what Tetris Effect is? I don't know. But like Tetris, but like you're putting things together to like form like bombs. Or like the blocks, like not only are you trying to clear lines to keep your thing from piling up, but you're trying to put things together. I realize that what I'm creating here is just like Bejeweled or whatever, but like vibe with me here. Like okay. Battle Bejeweled.
Sure.
Is basically what I want.
You could also do like a version of Tetris that's like set against like an opera. Okay. I'm pulling from the music of Clair Obscur from this, which is very like operatic.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe also you add like an element of like if you're successful, the opera like proceeds in one direction. If you're not successful, it proceeds in a different direction.
Okay.
And so you get like different combinations of songs as you go. And it's like one continuous sort of thing with like small breaks between levels, like Lumines, but with small breaks between levels.
Yeah.
But like you have to sit through the whole sort of opera and drop your blocks.
How about a kind of meta game where you are at a rave? Like you are playing as a character whose friends have dragged you to a rave.
Okay.
But you're a loser.
Okay.
You're the otaku.
You've got an awful man bun.
Yes, you're the otaku that what's-his-face didn't want to make games for.
Sure.
So you are at this rave with your PSP playing, I guess, something that resembles an old school Final Fantasy. And you are both trying to play that game, and you occasionally have to interact with the rave so that your friends don't.
You have to parry the people who are trying to approach you.
Exactly.
With your PSP.
Exactly. Or with well-timed, look over there. Is that Diplo? Right? Like,
yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
There's something to that. And you have to say, like, your PSP, here's the thing. Your PSP has a swollen battery.
Okay.
So, like, you're in, like, you're at, like, the end of this game that you're playing. You don't want to be at the rave.
Because your PSP is about to blow up. That's why you don't want to be at the rave.
No. I was saying it has to be plugged in.
Okay.
The whole time. Like, you're, like, at the end of this game. If you unplug it, you'll lose all your progress.
Okay.
And, like...
This is inspired by Madelyn's laptop.
Yes, of course this is inspired by Madelyn's laptop, but it's also inspired by the real plight of PSP owners everywhere with their swollen batteries and their bomb-like PSPs. So that's why you can't, like, of course, like, one solution would just be like, well, go home, why are you at the rave? But you're here, you want to play the game.
Yeah.
You're having an incredible lucky run.
Well, a lot of ideas.
A lot of ideas, for sure.
A lot of ideas thrown out for this one.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Which of those ideas do you think would be best? What would you like to see? I think Tetris Parry is probably there. It probably is good. Let's see. Do you want a video game that feels like going to a rave? In an ideal world, how many sources of haptic feedback would you receive on a given game? And in an ideal world, how French would your video games be? If you have thoughts on this or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode. Next week, it's six weeks in gaming.
Yep.
Great. How is it July?
I don't know.
But in 2 weeks, in mid to late July, Emma, what's on deck?
For our old game, we'll be talking about Her Story.
Wow. All right.
And for our new game, we'll be talking about Split Fiction.
We can't push that back? That's okay. That's okay. That's fine.
Okay.
No.
I can go back to the hat.
No. I can't. That's cheating.
We can cheat.
No. It's okay. That's cheating. I will then eventually play it.
Okay.
That's fine. I won't. The hat knows.
Okay.
Listeners, that's it for this week's show. Emma, pair us out of here.
This week, I hope that all your button presses are well timed.